All right, good morning. There is a monastery in Spain outside of Barcelona called Montserrat. In fact, this is historically famous for a number of reasons. It is the home of the Black Madonna that we will visit in September when we go there. It is also where Ignatius of Loyola laid down his sword from battle to pursue a religious life. But the story that I want to share today is that at one time there was a silent order that existed at this monastery in Montserrat, Spain. And it was very rigorous there. And so you were allowed to meet with the head of the monastery once a year and speak 2 words, because otherwise you were in complete silence the whole time. Can you imagine? I can't. It's too much. It's too much. But anyway, so this young guy comes in and he's silent for his whole first year, and he finally has a chance to meet with the head of the monastery, and he's got 2 words, so they're going to make it really count. And he says, "Food terrible." And he goes back into silence for a whole nother year, absolute silence. So at the end of the 2nd year, he gets his chance with the head of the monastery, and this time he says, again, 2 words, only 2 words, "bed lumpy." And he goes back into silence for a whole nother year. At the end of the 3rd year, he has his meeting with the head of the monastery, and he says, "I quit." And the head of the monastery looks up from his desk and he says, "Well, that does not surprise me at all. All you've done since you've got here is complain, complain, complain." So last week we talked about, or I was talking about asking ourselves better questions, and I hope that went well for you this week. And the better kind of questions are the empowering questions, the questions that support us in being more of our true best self, having more of the life we truly desire to have. So today I want to focus, again, with the questions, but particularly on attitude. I remember something that my mother, my father, my grandmother used to say all the time. If we said anything that was not as positive as they expected, they would say, "Well, make the best of it. Just make the best of it." I don't know, did you ever hear that? Just make that. See, we had the same mother. It's true. It's incredible. Just make the best of it. So, attitude, I believe that attitude and the quality of questions that we ask ourselves contribute, to our experience of life. In fact, if we shrink it down even a little more, the quality of questions you ask yourself contribute to the kind of attitude you move through your life with. So the quality of questions that we ask ourselves guides our own inner monologue. And like you've heard me say, I believe that we all have a monologue that's going from the time we wake up in the morning until we go to bed at night. And so the quality of questions we ask ourselves guides our inner monologue, and that guides the quality of life experience that we have. So the philosopher William James said, "The greatest discovery of my generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering the attitudes of their mind." So what this translates to is that our attitudes are more important than our aptitudes. I don't know if you've ever been in a position to go and apply for a job. But when you go apply for a job, at least long ago in a land far away when you applied for a job in person, because I know that doesn't happen much anymore now, but nobody ever said, "I'm in a rotten mood today, let me go apply for this job, they're going to love me," right? That just doesn't happen. Or have you ever, if you've been on the hiring end, you've never said, "Well, I want somebody who can do this and do this, has these skills, but above all, I hope they have a really lousy attitude." Yeah, because that's going to add so much to our business, somebody with a really stinko attitude. I know so many of you work in entertainment, and one of the things you know in entertainment is that because, there's always a timeline and there's a budget, that people like to work again, they rehire people they've worked with before because they know they're going to be easy to work with. They never say, "Well, let's hire them. They're really difficult. They'll probably cause a lot of problems on the production. We'll have to go into overtime. Maybe they'll even sue us. Let's hire them." right? I mean, so this is how important attitude is. That attitude is actually more important than aptitude. So I really believe that the way it works is to live a happier, more positive, emotionally rich life. We have to control our mental focus. In other words, you can't just have a lousy attitude because you're too lazy to have a good attitude, is what I'm talking about. And the way we do that is that we have to ask ourselves the right, empowering, life-affirming, expansive kinds of questions. Because I think the quality of the life that we are living has a lot to do with the quality of questions we ask ourselves on a daily basis. St. Paul said, "Let the mind be in you that was also in Christ Jesus." So one of the things that I think we would say about Jesus was that Jesus probably did not have a stinko attitude about things. You know, now not everybody got what he was talking about. Not everybody loved his healing. Not everybody liked his message. Not everybody was on board with his program. And yet I think he remained someone with a pretty good attitude about things. So what are the right questions? The right questions are the ones that move us toward our goals in life, toward our desired outcome, toward the results that we really, really want to experience. So this week, what comes to me as far as questions are, what do I value most in my life? See, that's an empowering question. What do I really value most in my life? I know we're all confronted with situations all the time. Just because we're in Science of Mind doesn't mean everything goes our way, right? So a question we could ask is, what's a better way of looking at this? You know, because I see it the way I see it, but what's a better way of looking at this? Of course, my ever-popular, okay, what can I learn from this? What is the universe trying to teach me here? And like I talked about last week, what am I grateful for? Now, chewing on this all week long, as I have been, one of the things I think we could ask ourselves, an empowering question, is, how could I make this more enjoyable, even fun? How can I make that more enjoyable, even fun? Yeah, you know, because I don't really know what else to do, right? And what am I grateful for? What am I grateful for? You know, it has not been a quiet week at Lake Wobegon here. We have had a very busy week. We had an enormous, big funeral here on Friday. And then we did our show on Friday night. Thank you to Sam and Diane for bringing that to us. Yeah. And then I had another memorial service on yesterday. It's been really, really busy. And so what I noticed was during the funeral on Friday, phones went off 4 times. 4 times during the funeral. Now, you know, Now, it wasn't my funeral. At times it felt like it could have been. But it wasn't my funeral, you know? And so on the inside, honest to God, I just had to like quietly laugh about this because I thought, you know, it's not my Sunday service. It's not my show. I'm just here to serve. I'm just going to roll with it. Have a good attitude, have a good attitude. You know, how could I make this more fun for me? So that like every time the phone went off, and the funny thing was, now this is my favorite thing about people who don't answer the phone, is they just let it keep ringing. Like, well, if I don't reach for it, nobody will think it's me. Yes, we do. We think it's you. We know it's you. Answer the phone, shut it off, okay? But I know I haven't had a phone rant in a while. I apologize. But, so another question that occurred to me actually during the funeral on Friday, I was about 3rd or 4th phone call into the service, and I thought, what's good about this? What's good about this? And my first response was, nothing! There is nothing good about this. This is sending me over the edge, you know? And I was like, breathe, breathe, breathe. Remember, you pray, you meditate. What's good about this? What's good about it? So I thought, okay, from the big picture, these people showed up. So that's important to the family, that people actually showed up. I mean, the place was full. So people really showed up, you know? What's good about this? Well, clearly, people's phones are ringing, so they must have really pressing stuff going on in their life. So again, it's that thing about our attitude. What can I learn from this? What am I grateful for? How can I make this more fun? What is actually good about this? Because, our attitude, I think, is often how we interpret the events in our life. If you've got a really good attitude, pretty much anything can happen and you can roll with it. Isn't that amazing? How when you're in a really great space, anything can happen and you're like, it's all right, no worries, come on, merge. You too, you merge. Yeah, you can merge too. Yeah, everybody merge, it's good, I'm in no hurry, life is fantastic, But on those days when you maybe have not such a good attitude, it's like, wait your turn, wait your damn turn. I remember this little quote about, I complained because I had no shoes until I met a man who had no feet. So that's helpful, I think, because no matter what I personally may be in a funk about, there is certainly somebody who is infinitely worse off than I am, and that helps me have a better perspective. So, if our attitude at the beginning of a difficult undertaking, I think that attitude, more than anything else, will determine the outcome, whether the outcome is successful or not. So if you tell yourself, I can deal with this, I can do this, this is not that hard, people all over the world are doing this, I can figure this out, I can do this, that kind of attitude will absolutely carry you through. I had read a long time ago, and I always like this, that an optimist is someone who goes after Moby Dick in a rowboat and brings tartar sauce. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. See, come back to this idea that the right questions, when we're asking the right questions of ourselves, it's empowering. What it does, when we ask the right questions, it's like it reaches down deep within us to those resources that have been on hold or on a back burner, and it starts to pull those resources up and say, hey, you have a lot more at your disposal here than you have been realizing. So the right questions are empowering because they move us in that direction of the outcome that we really, really desire. Because I think, again, the quality of our life is influenced by the quality of the questions we're asking ourselves. So if you are somebody, and maybe not anybody here, but perhaps people we know very well, who need to lighten up. They just need to lighten up. Could really ask themselves, how could I make this more fun? How could I make this more fun? Now, I realize it seems like not everything in life can be fun, but I think a lot more things can be fun than we allow them to be. I really do. And I think bringing a better attitude makes things a lot more fun. And if you know somebody in your life, again, I'm certain nobody here, but somebody who could be a little bit more optimistic, then another thing to ask is, what's good about this? What is good about this? And I know sometimes it feels like what's happening in our life, there is nothing good there. There is nothing good that can come from it. But I guarantee you, if that's your take on it, that will be so for you. But if you begin to ask yourself, what's good about this, all of a sudden the doors start to open and we can start to see maybe little hints, little glimmers of benefit. Right? So if our focus, if we have a focus that's positive or mental or negative, positive or negative mental states are determined by what we focus on. Think about it. And so a technique is to catch yourself, and a way to do that is when you see yourself going down that negative road, is just say, stop. This is not acceptable, or this is unacceptable. All right, stop. This is unacceptable. And so, of course, challenges come up. And so we want to use this to turn a negative into a positive. And so after I say, stop, this is unacceptable, how can I turn that negative into a positive? It's like, well, what's a greater spiritual truth I could affirm here? What is a spiritual truth that I could affirm here? I don't... So the quote that I had written down on a Post-it that I found in a book, and I didn't write the name of who said it, so maybe you said it, maybe I said it, I don't know who said it, doesn't matter. But the quote was this, is that I don't sing because I'm happy because I sing. And I think that's really important, and I think that really is in alignment with science of mind, because if we wait for outer circumstances to be the way we want them to be before we're in a good mood, before we have a good attitude, before we're appreciating life and we're good to the people around us, if we're waiting for all that, it's probably never going to happen, right? But one of the ways that all of that can take place is that if we just start to, I don't sing because I'm happy because I sing. Emerson said, long ago, Ralph Waldo Emerson said, a man is what he thinks about all day long. So I believe that for most of us, we have several things that we go back to again and again. They're like our fallback, that we go back, maybe it's about 30 or 40 things for each of us, We got a little conversation in our head about this, and a conversation about that, and a conversation about what if here, and a conversation about what if there. And it seems to me, when I talk to people, that the things that run in their mind most of the time, everybody's got like a bushel basket full of those things. And even though we think we're always thinking new thoughts, we're really not. We're doing an enormous amount of rehearsing old thoughts over and over again. Which brings me to, if you want to have different results, you have to do something different. If you want to have something different than you've ever gotten before, you have to do something different than you've ever done before. There was a guy who was an avid duck hunter, and he was in the market for a new bird dog. And so he searched and searched and searched, and much to his delight, he found a dog who would walk on water to retrieve the birds, the ducks. And so he thought, this is fantastic. None of my friends are ever going to believe this, that I have a dog that walks on water. And so he bought the dog. He just had to have this dog. And so the next day, he invites his very best friend, his buddy, to go out hunting with him. And so they go hunting, and they're sitting, waiting in the brush, and all of a sudden, some ducks fly over, and they shoot, and a bird falls, and the dog trots across the water and gets the duck and trots back across the top of the water, and the friend remains completely silent. And the hunter's like, that's really interesting. So this goes on and on all day long. Birds, shots, the dog trots across the water, gets the bird, trots back across the water. So on the way home, the hunter says to his friend, he says, did you notice anything unusual about my dog? And the friend says, I sure did. He can't swim. So maybe another way to say this is what Ralph Waldo Emerson said, is that who you are speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying. So there was an ancient Greek poet 400 years before Christ, and he had 4 words that were incredibly important. His name was Hermesianax. Hermesianax, that's it. And his words were, as within, so without. It's really hard for good stuff to come to you if you have a lousy attitude. It just is. You make it harder for the universe to bless you. You make it harder for good things to come to you. You make it harder for wonderful people to come into your life. You make it harder to have enjoyable experiences. Years ago, Charles Dickens, who is really actually important in terms of new thought, because Charles Dickens and the English Romantic poets were really among the first people, when it was not popular in the thought of the day, to say that there is value in every individual. And so people loved the English Romantic poets, and they loved Dickens. Dickens' writings were like little installments in the newspaper every day. And so people would buy the papers to read the latest installments, because think of Scrooge, right? That Scrooge was this horrible, horrible guy, but was completely redeemable, Right? And so people loved hearing that because their lives were really, really hard. You know, I mean, they were inhaling coal smoke all the time, right? I mean, life was really hard. People didn't live very long. And here they get the newspaper and this guy says, your life has value. There's something worthwhile in you. And remember, at this time, people really had no independence of their own. They were all subjects of a king. All right? So what the message they had gotten up until people like Dickens was that your life does not matter. And Dickens said, no, 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 your life does matter. You as an individual are important. So something that Dickens wrote, he wrote of a man who was imprisoned for many, many years. And he was, and this man, while in prison, locked down in a dungeon, he just longed for freedom, longed for freedom, longed for freedom. And finally, after years, his day of liberation comes, and he's led from this, gloomy, damp dungeon out into the sunlight. It's a bright and beautiful world. And he looks up at the sun, and he looks around for a moment after years of being down in a dungeon, and he turns and walks back down into his cell. See, he'd become comfortable with the confinement. The thought of freedom was actually overwhelming to him. And I thought, wow, isn't that interesting that we can get so used to what we don't want that when we're actually confronted with what we do want, we turn away from it, that we would do that. So, at the end of the day, I think what will support us, what will assist us, is what good. Well, all right, so particularly for the grouch we know. Let me say it that way. For the grouchy person we know, what good did it do to be grouchy today? Because again, it's really hard for anything good or worthwhile to come to you if that's the space your head is in, right? So, but good things to ask, I think, was today a personal growth day for me? At the end of the day, just before you go to sleep, was there personal growth in today for me? And probably, if you're paying attention, there very well may be. And did I contribute to others today? Because I guarantee you, if you go to bed for a few days and at the end of the day that today was a personal growth day for me, and if you go to bed for a few days and at the end of the day that you contributed to other people, you're going to have a better attitude. When you have a better attitude, you're going to have a better life. Let's pray. So we turn our attention inward now for a moment to just remember that right here where we are, God is in its fullness. And so I speak this word for each and every one of us, that we let the mind in us be the same mind that was in Christ Jesus. That we have the mind that knows our oneness with God, and from that oneness with God, we act and think, behave in a loving way toward the world around us. I speak the word for each and every one of us, that whatever our mindset has been, we set off in a direction of an improved quality of thought. That we're on the affirmative side of the street in every conceivable way in our life. And so I claim that whatever troubles us, whatever difficulty, whatever struggle we may have had, I know that the right thinking absolutely contributes to lifting us up out of that condition. Because I'm certain that it's the will of God for each and every one of us that healing takes place. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. So we include in our prayer today our family members and friends and loved ones. We know that right where they are, God is present. We let our prayer be a blessing in the world around us. So all of these things that pull at our attention on a daily basis, we affirm God's perfect, peaceful, loving, harmonious, abundant presence right there. We bless our church, and we bless all churches everywhere. We bless synagogues and temples and mosques and ashrams, all paths to God. And I'm certain that by being together, each and every one of us is blessed today, that we get raised up, that today we've let go of something that does not serve us anymore, and we've embraced a greater spiritual truth that makes us more of who we are divinely designed to be. And so for this and so much more, I give thanks, and I release this word with a full heart, and so it is. Together we all say, Amen.